I saw it just before I came, yeah.
Richard. His first name is Richard, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Moss.
Looks good to me. Oh, we're not on
You're
here.
not on yet.
I guess. He said a half a minute. No, There you
Okay,
go.
Now we're on.
Well, good evening, and I'd like to call the meeting of the Planning Board of September 3rd to order. My name is John Weiss, I'm the chair.
George Morse.
Kathleen Pearson?
John O'Connell.
Martha Taylor, Town Planner.
And so the agenda that we have tonight, if you go online, you can see what the agenda is. It's relatively light. But the first item for us is to approve the meeting minutes of the last meeting that we had on August the 20th. Can I have a motion on the minutes or any comments on them?
Martha thought I might have something to add. I really didn't. The other thing that I had reported, Martha, was just that I have had some progress, but I had nothing to report at that point.
Okay.
Okay?
So
Okay,
Can,
All right.
shall the minutes stay as written, or do
Yes.
you want to, okay.
Yes.
okay. Do you want to make
Move to
a
approve.
Yes, I move
second?
approval of the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so appearances and there are none. So old business, review and discussion of municipal building committee report. So in the minutes, it does indicate that we will discuss it tonight and then form an opinion at our next meeting on the 17th. So with that, maybe I'll just open it up for discussion, or just go down the line and ask Kathleen, do you have any thoughts on that, what you read? And
I thought it was an exceptional report. I thought that the town could have confidence in it since it was done by an outside firm that had experience doing these type of studies before. And I thought that it went through each facts, and when it came down to the options, I think it would made an obvious choice based on price and square footage. So I think I'm really happy with it, and I wanted to thank the Municipal Building Committee, Martha, for
Thank you.
doing this. I think it has a lot of teeth too, being someone from outside the town versus, somebody who's inside, has a son that works at the police department or town hall.
And
So,
we've
yeah.
also gotten, since then, we've gotten the brochure from CSS and all the, police facilities that they've done and so on and so forth, so that, we've got that background as well.
you
Yeah.
got that today, didn't you? Eric
I
sent
didn't
that
have
to
it,
you?
but I didn't have time to look at it this afternoon.
You realize that for them to go on and do the design, you'd have to go through a little dance of a consultant.
No, they know that it would go out to bid. I mean, they're not the
Well,
ones.
it's
It
my
clearly
sense-
says a conceptual design on it.
Right,
Clearly
right.
says right on there, conceptual
I know
design.
that. I'm saying, if we're happy with them and want to keep them, then I believe there's a mechanism to do that, but you need to hire somebody else to review
Oh,
their
yeah.
stuff,
Oh, yeah.
to be sure that it's not,
Right.
Right. But I think the important thing was, at least for this first phase, to have a credible report with, done by somebody
I was
with
impressed
credentials
also with it. I thought
behind
they
it.
did a nice job, very nice job.
George?
I have several comments, John.
Okay.
Yeah, some of these I've talked about with Martha. One of the things I didn't see in the report, which I thought was excellent, by the way, the methodology was great, and the options were very understandable. One of the questions I had was about the relocation site, or a relocation site, and the expense for the same. That's not mentioned in the report,
Right.
and I don't know whether anything is in mind yet, and I would ask Martha again if there's anything there.
Well, can you opine on that at all?
I know that Eric is putting together a spreadsheet of numbers, and I thought that was something that he had actually included in that, and that will vary depending on what option is chosen. And we've got, potential, we might all have to move someplace else for a
Right.
year or more, so we would have those costs, and there is an item in here about, finding, locating a place.
Locating sites. There is a number in the, I'm not sure which option it is.
There
but
he
it
is
had
here.
$500,000 as sort of a contingency.
Welcome, we're talking about your report.
Nice things,
Sure,
yeah,
Eric.
no,
Nice
all nice
job.
things.
In fact, it's
And-
perfect that you're here because the questions are coming up that you could possibly ask.
And the other thing, we did meet with the Finance Committee last night, and one of the items that I think Gene Case brought up was the need to have something in there for maintenance.
O&M.
O&M, yeah.
O&M, and George had just asked the question on.
About
th-
relocation
those
and
re-
relocation sites.
Which you acknowledge are not included, but are you?
I have, I've started to work on that.
Okay, that's fine.
That must be
Relocation.
difficult because, first of all, it depends on whether or not you're going to be on septic and you have public water or well water, and then whether you're going to have to clear the site if it's over the one. I mean, it
Right,
must
so-
be pretty.
The thought to date was just to get the program, to get people to agree on a program. And then we could talk about, and I got a little bit of cost and understanding last night, where the finance committee feels they are. And so the numbers that, for the current debt service, the project, which right now is in the report slated to be about 8 million, and then there's about 3.5 million that the finance committee is thinking about that they have for other needs in town that needs to all get added together so that everybody has one thought of.
What are the, what are the total bonding issues before the town?
Right, and other, right, needs, or what's the debt level? Because I guess the finance committee said, look, Eric, we just got out of being at 15% of our total in terms of debt service, which was the highest around for all these towns. We're finally getting it under control, and then we're gonna go back out to people and say, hey, let's just move it right back to 15. And the fact that they think that they had shown the town people that they had been lowering debt service and had a plan in which to do so provides them, they just had a favorable annual town meeting in terms of what they presented because they got debt under control, and they just don't, finance committee just doesn't wanna add that right back in.
Right.
But it hasn't been seen on a piece of paper, and I'm not sure exactly I know how to do it. I think I need to give them some numbers, they need to embrace it, and they need to incorporate it in that chart that shows how the debt service is coming and going and will be maintained. And as I told them, this is a town facility issue, it's not just a police station or a town hall, but there are facility issues that the town needs to do, and they need to factor this in. The fact that we've been sitting on this for 10 years, has made it more expensive, but things are getting worse downstairs.
Right.
By the weekend, by the week. So,
I think you brought up a great point last time, is we can't neglect it anymore, that it's not going on, that we have to address, that we eventually have to do something soon.
So the committee thought if we could establish what the program needed to be.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Just that one pops off, if you wanna.
Pop off and just hold it. Sorry.
So if we could establish what the program needs to be in order to facilitate the functions, then we could, we could get to the cost. And it seems from the finance committee, from some people's point of view, that they're thinking addition, renovation, sort of half of what has been proposed in option 2 is the likely thing to pass. And I guess in terms of being in the committee, kind of had to put the brakes on the discussion of, let's not talk about what's likely to pass. Let's first just figure out what we need to solve the problem. Let's understand that, and let's not do something that's a Band-Aid that we're at this again in 5 years or 10 years. Because if we're gonna have trouble passing it the first time or announcing it to people, then we're gonna end up having a half of what we need for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So, difficult.
It's tough also to summarize. This was a rather lengthy, you were in front of them for over an hour, I think, last night. And,
I shuffled my papers, but I have a spreadsheet that outlines the police station and the town hall for all 4 options. It has the costs that come out of the report, and then it has moving temporary facilities, sewer, site development costs, and those are the things that are gonna make each of the 4 options move in terms of cost. And FF&E, and so there are certain assumptions made in the report that cover some of that, and I'm trying to break it out so that it's equal, and then they can become dynamic amongst the options, so that,
would you do
I'm
your
working on
follow-up
that.
questions? Do you have other questions you want to bring up?
Do I? Yes, yeah. Well, this leads into a question I had about the police department. A couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that bringing the police department up to a certifiable standard, there wasn't much margin left for growth within the building. And this whole thing is supposed to run for 20 years, or useful even longer than that.
50.
50.
50 years.
So that, okay, so there is no standard for a police station from the state that says you need this. What they do have is there's a mass code for correctional facilities in terms of, once you've incarcerated, have a prisoner, taken somebody into custody, there are certain regulations for size of cells and layouts of cells. So we have, the heart of the station has a Massachusetts regulation set up for it. The rest of the station is debatable. And even the information that John's looking at right now in terms of other towns, in terms of population, have yet to try to just figure that out on a correlation, because there's some towns that have a police station that's twice the size, and they have a police force that's the same size. And there are other towns that have, so it doesn't quite relate to that. And
Right.
it kind of goes on what the town needs for services. So, and even John, Deputy Chief Lucy last night mentioned that in terms of having 11 full-time officers, they have about 5 full-time equivalents. So that's like half of some of the other like kind of towns in terms of population and force size. So there's some things to reconcile there to make sure we're understanding where
But
we
there
are.
have been reductions in the force size over the years.
Right,
and
Yeah,
it's
extreme.
not necessarily the best thing that ever happened.
No, it isn't, and the finance committee has said that they feel that the read on the town is that the people have told them that they need to do more with less. So, you know, what
But
is it?
is that what I thought right now what we're trying to do is see what the best option is and not get caught up on whether it's gonna pass yet.
What happened last night at the meeting was they went right, they didn't really talk about what's the best site. They didn't really talk about a number of things. They really got right into the issue of what do they think can be absorbed in terms of financial support, and what do they think can be supported in terms of getting something through. It's not what we've been asked, but
Yeah.
that's what the finance committee got into right away. So, I mean, it's really they have a different perspective on it. So-
Okay,
Take their past 5 histories, take the last 2 overrides that were needed, take the vote that didn't pass for both of them, and how they've then looked at refinancing and
Right.
issues in town. So that's their focus, and they're dealing with their recent history is how they're portraying what's being put in front of them. You know, if I came to them with a reasonable option and said it's gonna cost $2 million and we're gonna get everything we need, I probably would have gotten a blessing and a handshake and
Right.
been passed out the door. But the $8 million number, and that's a really large number, we haven't been able to pass 300,000 is where their discussion is.
but as far as the planning board, we're not gonna get hung up on that. We're just gonna evaluate the report like we're supposed to, right?
We're supposed to evaluate the report and make a recommendation about what option we think makes most sense for the town from a planning perspective.
Okay,
Right, and if there are some, I don't know, items of value in terms of planning that help one option over the other, or points that you would think would be valuable for an option to have, historic location in town, just general sighting for the public, things like that, those are important to know, because those will all be a piece to
Right.
to eventually get to the site.
and I think that's where our value comes in, because the finance committee
Right.
wouldn't evaluate that, so,
They're not, there wasn't one question about site last night from them.
okay.
Just wasn't it.
So if you don't mind, I don't wanna talk about that stuff then from the finance committee.
I think that's fine.
I had enough of finance last night.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's not inappropriate to set that parameter for us.
That's sometime later, quite a bit later.
when it gets into more detail,
When we have a program, when we know that that's the cost that we want to champion, when we then find a site, the site then needs to be debated. Can it fit that program? Yes. What is that cost compared to the second option? And if it's a private site that we're buying from somebody, it's gonna have a couple $1 million more than if it's a site being leased for $1 a year, or if it's a site that the town owned and is existing. So then, if we have two sites and they're fairly close because one's here and one's down at Governor's, and the cost for the site is equal, and the cost for sewer connections is equal, then what are the other items of value that each site has in terms of the benefit for the town and the residents that people want to know which is the better site?
Right,
And that's what we're gonna discuss.
right, that's what
Okay.
we're gonna do.
We're gonna discuss.
George, continue.
Okay, one other question, it's sort of a side issue. This building faces slightly south of west. Morgan Avenue is slightly east of south. Is there any consideration of solar power?
I haven't even, we
I
haven't.
know you haven't thought of that. I mean, that's
All
far ahead
depends on the
too.
amount of roof you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need I don't know, just last thing I looked at was a parking garage that would have a roof of 40,000 square feet that might be able to do 650 kilowatt hours a year or something, usable energy at X cost. So something smaller at 20,000 square feet of roof, you're not gonna get the bang for your buck, and your performance is gonna be 64 years, and it's just gonna fall off.
At 64 years, you don't do it.
No. So I don't know what that is yet. I don't know if, geothermal, wind probably is not an option. Solar needs to be big enough to do that.
Right.
It's not to say that we couldn't have 16 solar thermal panels that they're doing domestic hot water for,
Some
The
lights,
facility.
things like that.
something like that. Gray water reuse, controls in the building, optimized controls. It's not like you have a heavy glass and glazing building that's shades, but certainly occupancy sensors for people that come and go out of offices could save energy. So there's lots of little things you can do to be sustainable. And that's a good idea. I could easily take a LEED scorecard and just fill it out and say, here's the first pass on it.
Yeah, and if nothing else, the building could be pre-wired for solar, even if you didn't do it right
And
away.
solar costs are coming down, and solar
Right.
panels are becoming more efficient, but even a solar panel at 15% efficiency, you still need a fair amount of them to get
Right.
something out of it.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I had a number of things, Eric, that I'm pretty sure you probably already addressed, but just to mention them. The septic system is, of course, kind of iffy and et cetera, et cetera. Any talk about trying to get a pump into Newburyport? No matter which way we go, none of Newburyport is downhill from here, so be a pump system no matter which way we
I
went.
just have a $750,000 number across the board for septic to sewer at the moment, and that still needs to be tested somehow.
Okay.
And I guess the thought from the finance committee is that somehow they're focused on, they know that's a need for the town hall, and they would like to see whatever could happen at town hall be tied to that, because that's a no-brainer, it's a must-need, and they want to put the whole thing together, which kind of drives the scheme that they think about. I just have a number, and I haven't even gotten that far to assess how I might
Sure.
improve or make that number more accurate. Has anything been done?
Well, you've answered the question.
Can
It
you
is,
talk
it's
to
underway,
Tracy?
No.
under consideration.
Tracy she said she's starting to talk to Newbury, so she. is
I think
probably-
that's more of her town administrator issue. You might want to talk to her.
Yep.
So I have a placeholder for it, and each option, again, if it's Governor's, it's gonna be slightly different number. If it's a brand-new site, it's a septic something, and if it's this site, it's a tie-in, and that has a number for it. Whether it's option 1 or 2, it's the same number.
How far along has the architecture gone
The
now?
architecture in the report is really just a conceptual design study. It just says that here's the listed program of square footage spaces, and it fits on the site. It's
Okay.
not intended to be the final design.
Okay.
An architect out there with design aspirations would take that program that we
Understand
say,
Of course.
and then lay it out as best.
No, I understand. The point I was getting at, though, would be maybe we need to go a little further in the design before, and have the cost estimate reflect a more detailed design, level of design, before we spring this number in terms of going to press with
I
it
am-
formally.
Taking option 2, and I am taking option 1 with some thought about what to do with it, and I have a professional cost estimator that will get me a complete, or conceptual design, but a full schedule of values for it, so I can test the number. Right now, that number
That's good.
takes the average number of, call it $315 a square foot, takes the square footage, multiplies it out, that's what's in the report.
No, I think that's a good number from
It's,
everything I can
it's
see.
a good place to start, and so I'm gonna take
Yeah.
it one step further, and then we could see if, I don't know, maybe I can get a couple options that if it had to be brick, it might be a little this, so I have a little bit more information to talk to people as.
It sounds like people are asking you from a conceptual design to get more into more detail. I mean, when do you just say that's not till the next step?
Because I think I need to vet the number that's out there, because the $8 million number right now is falling down and not even standing up. So I have a program, and I can't get people to focus on the program until I get to the cost, and so if I can figure out the cost and be able to have better data on that, then I think maybe I could get a better understanding of what the program is.
I feel for you.
Mhm.
I really do.
Hey,
Thank
it'd
you.
be nice if you were a private client and there was only 2 of you making decisions, and the other 2 were just listening, but this public stuff is, I do mostly private client stuff, so.
Yeah.
It's tedious.
Yeah, the reason I was asking that, because I've had a little experience in the Report High School project where, oh, by the way, after the architecture got beyond the stage at which financing was done by the city, oh, by the way, oh, we got $1 million worth of underpinning. Oh, they didn't share that with the cost estimator or with anybody else. Led to a lot of heartburn. That's all I was getting at there. And it sounds like you got that under control. I thought a 3% estimate contingency was way low, but on the other side of the coin, I think you built that contingency into the project without admitting it. So I think you got a pretty good number, frankly.
Yeah, I
For
would-
talking purposes at this stage, I think a very good number.
Yeah, and I think if a little plan, and the grossing factor for the police station is extremely minimal at a 200, 300-foot corridor, because basically it's a single loaded corridor right down the center of the station. It's not, excessive with lots of corridors and little meeting spaces and other kind of, huge atrium or something in it, that it's a very efficient building.
Yeah.
So I think we could start at 8 and certainly work it down, and that is a concern that once you put that number out there and ask for it, that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's bad enough now, but it really gets very unpleasant after the town has voted for it, and all of a sudden it becomes,
Something else.
yeah, that has life turns a sharp left turn. Everything else is nitpicking. I'll hit you sometime when I see you.
Martha, do you want to add some, or, I know you're on the committee, I guess
I'm
you
on the
can.
committee, I really.
So I have a couple of things. So when you go to town meeting, you want to take one, you don't want to take an option, you want to take, this is our recommendation?
The selectmen have stated that they would like a recommendation from the committee. We're still trying to feel everybody out so that we can figure out what
What,
recommendation to make,
right,
so that we don't end up making a recommendation and then everyone just throws the recommendation on a pile and walks away because.
right, you need everybody
Need
on board.
support.
You need everybody on board.
Yeah, and I don't know if I need the planning board to make a solid recommendation on a single option as opposed to give support of why sites in town or siting is important and helpful. I mean, I certainly would like an option from the finance committee, an option from the planning board, an option from the capital planning campaign. We as a committee can make a recommendation and then we can say, this is what we want to do. But I think it's about getting support so that we have and can discuss this with the residents and we can build the case for.
So along those lines, we do, when you read through the report, you have these first 2 options, and then you have
Two more.
2 more kind of come from the cloud. And one we know, and the other we don't know, although we know. And so the question is, how does the planning board treat the option 4, from your perspective?
You could treat it as an option, but to me, without, making my first public statements on it,
Right.
I don't see how the program could justify that building, or a building of.
Right,
of
so
the
so are
size
we
that's been
allowed
stated.
in our discussion to talk about that building? even though the owner doesn't want it discussed?
No, you know that there's,
Absolutely not, from what I know. I don't think we should.
So we just leave it mute?
I think we do at this point, yeah.
Okay.
I think
You-
that too much harm would be done.
What do you
if we
sense?
Blabbed.
Are you talking about,
Option 4,
option 4, you know, the police station stays here, and it has a presence in a place where the town hall and the police station have
Right.
always been.
right.
And, you know, the town hall moves
Goes to,
somewhere.
moves
and-
somewhere to this other building.
And one of the things that hasn't been talked about or focused on that issue, and truthfully, that's, you know, that's the orphan issue, because it's got a lot to go with it, and we haven't picked it up to champion it, because we're still just trying to figure out.
So
if-
to be honest, I don't see it as an option.
Well,
Unless someone is willing to talk about something publicly, you don't have an option. I mean, I just don't think you do.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like playing a
Let's-
charade game.
right, and that's true, I don't,
And I'm not, this is not your
no,
problem.
no, I'm thinking with,
well,
I don't know anything
I'm
about
thinking
that.
that perhaps it could be
So
discussed.
I don't know why I'm confused. I don't know what the option 4 is. Okay.
It could be discussed in the abstract if town hall were to locate to some other part of town, you know,
well, you could pass judgment if town hall should be better located somewhere else in town.
We can talk about that.
yeah.
And we can talk about if it was located far or not far.
Right,
Right.
and what the criteria for
Right.
the building might
And
be.
the
Okay. Well,
values and benefits of having a police station and a town hall that are relatively near each other that might
right.
define some center of town or something.
Or on opposite sides of town.
On your relocation and O and M analysis, when might you have that? Will we have it to inform us or not?
I'm willing to, I guess after last night, put it out there and just say, this is what I have, and this is the beginning thoughts, and if anybody has any detail to add to it, I'm certainly welcome to it. I could issue that next week.
O and M, you can pretty well take off of, various kinds of pro formas that use O and M analyses of similar kinds of new buildings. I'm sure that they are per square foot analyses that that are
Yeah,
probably
there's an
valid.
operational cost downstairs, and
Yeah.
we could look at all the factors that, of
Right.
if and why, and then justify what,
See what it is here, see what it is downstairs, and extrapolate. Okay. Now, getting to option 1 for a second. The thing that hit me was, it wasn't clear to me that, and yet, in reading it over again, maybe it is, but, so, let me tell you what my first question was. Is there some way that you could do a modest rehab of this structure? Build a new police station behind us, 8,000 square feet, which is what I think that calls for, 80, 85, whatever the size is. Without having to go through extraordinary relocation costs.
Like phase it.
Yeah, somehow.
well, that's what I'm getting
so-
at, and thinking that yes, you could do an addition for inspectional services. You could even hold on that, and you could build a new police station here. You could do it so this could come down in the future, and you could build a new town hall in the future.
Or it could
to
be,
that.
the point is,
And-
it can continue to function.
Yes,
That's what I was after.
right.
And the biggest difficulty I saw in that was, I don't know what percentage of the police functions are downstairs and what percentage are in
Trailer.
out back.
There's 3,200 square feet gross on this first floor, and so there's 2,800, 2,600 square feet for a police station downstairs. There's about 1,400 square feet in trailers.
So
But-
with,
But functionally, we've got the chief, the deputy chief, a detective, 2 conference rooms in the back, and also our Board of Health.
so,
Largely administrative, in other
Yeah.
words.
so the question is there some way to keep the police department functioning during a construction project here and a construction project in the rear, knowing that you're taking some of those, facilities out, but can they be moved someplace that don't destroy the functionality of the police department, so that it reduces a combination of your rehab costs and your relocation costs. That's the only thought I had in looking at
Assume
the
you have
rehab option.
a parking lot, and if you were willing to forego some parking, you could take those trailers and put them all in the parking lot right there and clear up a construction zone that could happen.
So if that, let's take that for a second. If that were to happen, which leads me to really my last question about parking. Because looking at the plan, it wasn't clear to me that the parking had been flushed out that much for either the option 1 or option 2.
The benefit of option 2 is that the first floor of the building is lowered, and the grade outside is lowered, so that it makes parking around the entire building
Feasible.
or a better layout.
It works better for that.
Lowers everything.
For option 2, not so much for option 1.
Right, option 1, you're stuck with this, you're
Yeah.
putting in ramps for accessibility. You could build a police station, put an elevator in there, and call an accessible entrance up from the lower level up in. Option 2 solves accessibility all the way around the building, still gives you an elevator to have multiple floors, but you're coming in through an accessible entrance through the front door. So, option 2 tries to solve everything in a better way, and option 2, you're still left with.
So,
I don't know why anybody would go with option 1. If you're gonna have a cheaper price for option 2, you're gonna get a new building that's more efficient. It's gonna meet all the problems.
It's
To
gonna
solve all the problems that we have now. I mean, you're talking about relocation. I mean, we can relocate people to other sites, municipal sites. We have the library. We have other places we can relocate people.
Tracy said they took everybody in West Newbury and they stuck them like in an auditorium, and there was just a field of desks, and that's how they worked. And they just did it.
I mean, you're going to kind of suffer a little to have a big reward at the end. And it's going to be a better building. It's going to be more efficient for parking. You're going to be more efficient. It's going to have, I think it said the utilities or all that stuff
The
will be
renovation of
shared.
this building, you're looking at walls and doors, and that's about the only thing that would stay. The whole mechanical system downstairs, air conditioning, air ventilation, and just the fact that, how much, I think a lot of people still think, oh, well, the police are operating down there, so we must be able to get we could put some town hall people down there. Nobody wants to work down there. I guess if you solve the septic to the sewer and you put a couple offices with some windows, you could claim some space, but if you're gonna put better mechanical systems in there, you're gonna lose some headrooms, and it's already, kind of tight. Plus, there's a storage issue of trailers out at the transfer station that the town needs some space for storage, and if the basement is freed up and the extra space, or not really the extra space, but just the space that you're building to house people, now you have space to solve another problem. So, maybe there need to get the cost for the trailers and put some number to that, because that's part of the problem that's being solved as well.
I think
And-
that the key too is that we want to spend as much money as possible and still have a high efficiency, and that does that for the second option. I mean, right now you're not going to have, I don't think, the same efficiency for your square footage with option 1 than you are with 2. I'm not saying it's a bad option. I just think it's a better option with option 2.
And I would think if we skinny down the program and we do the absolute minimum in terms of renovation here, that you could get the cost down to, I don't know, maybe it's a $5 million to $8 million number. But I don't think you can do the project for less than 5.
Oh, I don't think so either. I was just, because I was looking at it as 2 separate projects, if you will.
And
A brand-new police
Well,
station
may come to that, may come that, we just have
and a
to.
rehab of this.
But if
I'm
you-
not sure that, I'm not saying that's right.
But if
I'm
you
just-
do that, then you're not going to be dealing with the inefficiencies with the parking situation. Isn't that one of the benefits
Well, I
of
think you're
2?
left, that's why parking was my last question. I think that parking is a problem with option 1. I
Yeah.
don't think you
Yes.
park it. I don't think
I
you
think so
park it.
too.
I just don't, I don't see the number of spaces necessary for 14,000 square feet versus, how much is everything here?
Well, you lose spaces, you
lose.
lose parking
So,
spaces.
so.
There'll be a Sally
so-
Port, and
so
there'll be
I'm-
more.
So maybe option 1 is not feasible, because you don't, you can't park it.
Option 1 is only viable if you consider doing the least amount and accepting things that you already have accepting the inefficiencies that you're having. You're willing to live with that because you just don't want to
But,
afford the
but
cost.
option one, the way you presented it, really doesn't do that. Option one says we're gonna basically reconfigure everything and build a new.
Because no one was of the mind of saying, let's do the least, let's
Oh.
do the minimum, let's just do it. Option one and two, we're trying to be equal in terms of let's solve the problem.
Even, the point is, as soon as you add an 8,000 square foot building here, your parking is shot. You can't park.
The cost is the same, though. It's not like
That's right.
the cost is the same whether you do a rehab.
No,
I think it's actually
By the
more
way-
if you do a rehab. I think it's gonna be more.
I'm not sure, but that's not what I was, well, I guess I was driving towards that possibly. But you would have to basically leave most of this the way it is to appreciate any kind of savings. Because
Cost
the cost of
savings, right.
town halls is not I mean, it's there. But the major cost here is the police station.
Right.
I mean, 2 to 1. And I don't think that should be compromised, honestly. I think the police station should be the size that it should be. And so the only question is, in town hall, when you're left with this, what do you need to do to make it functional? It's certainly, let's face it, you have a meeting in here, and there's no place to have a meeting. I mean, it's the most unfunctional town hall I've ever been associated with. It's almost an embarrassment.
I don't know, maybe some people that walk in probably like the sense that they can stand in the middle and talk to the clerk and go to the assessors and do that, and other people are probably confused by being in an open space.
You can't even have a private meeting.
Can't have a private
No,
meeting.
I know.
The other, I think the big
Well, it's
point
cells
should be on these
downstairs.
different options is we're trying to, if you're gonna ask for money to build a new police station, and whatever option it is, you wanna have the longest life expectancy. And, I mean, you don't wanna put Band-Aids on it, ask for money, and then go back. I mean,
Right, or build something that doesn't, the first option, when it was proposed for the Public Safety Complex Committee, had a joint exercise break room in it. And people that know that there's only 2 people, full-time employees for the fire department, and there's only usually 3 people on duty during like an evening shift or, for the police, we're saying, why is that so excessive? But part of that space was also flex space for future planning, that if they needed more offices, they have that built in for future planning. It unfortunately got called an exercise room in the first go-around, and it should have been expansion space.
Well, then I'll go back to my second question, which is the relocation cost and where it happened seems to me an important part, not today, but as we go to town meeting, and where that takes place. So, how, for 2 years, one assumes it's 2 years, right? 2-year construction period,
Yeah, 16,
18 months to
18
2
months.
years.
Yeah, everything's 18 months, so.
So where is town hall and where is the police department for 2 years? And I just don't know what the options are. I mean, I don't know. We used to have, but anyway, I don't know.
Lots and lots of trailers, I'd be afraid.
There's that. I mean, you could rent the fireman's hall for 2 years and put a bunch of staff people in there,
Maybe.
maybe.
Well, that's an option. I mean, the point is, that's an interesting option. That's a potential interesting option. If, who knows? But that's pretty interesting. There's a lot of space back there.
There is. Yeah, you could put the whole town hall function.
You could put the whole town hall and the
Yeah, we
police
could.
back there in trailers. And that's where they are while they,
But that isn't gonna be free either, I would expect. I mean, they depend on that hall for
Some
well,
revenue.
for revenue, yeah.
maybe it's
Good.
a negotiation. Yeah, so whatever their loss leader is, loss on, well, it's an interesting
That
question.
would be interesting to know what
Pardon?
it would be interesting to know what their revenue is from
Yeah, yeah.
that, which is
That-
something we tried to
definitely.
find
But
out.
there's an efficiency to keeping everybody in town hall together. You can't just logically say you're gonna save every nickel and sprinkle people and lodge them here and there, because it's just not gonna work. So, yeah, there is a,
I mean, I'll go out on a limb. My perspective, I know we're not supposed to say anything until next week, but is that we are best served in this town from a planning point of view of having both these functions together.
By what?
Having both these functions together.
Yeah.
That's my perspective. But we, as a board, will come up with something for next
well,
week.
see that at the selectmen meetings, the chief is regularly there and called upon to give his opinion or state something for the benefit of the selectmen.
There's a symbiotic relationship that makes things work. That's the way it should be.
Well, I agree with you all. I think if you want a horse, you ought to get a horse and not
Donkey.
buy a camel and then hire a plastic surgeon, you know?
George, any other?
I'm all set. Thank you, Joe.
Kathleen?
Are we gonna talk about, location of preference?
I think
Sure.
That's premature.
Well, it's
Well-
part of the option.
Well, we have to do it by the 17th. That, we've,
So, yeah.
so I think we can talk about it now and decide what we,
Um,
so if we have,
Location?
yeah. So
Maybe we
this,
should do that. There is always executive session. That's
No,
a possibility.
I'm just talking about backing up why we might choose
we
one
don't
of
need
our
to talk about
options.
this option
Oh, okay.
four.
Oh, all right.
We don't
Okay.
have
It's,
to talk about
you know,
option
that's
four.
why I'm
Well,
talking
Yeah,
about.
I think
We
the.
talk about option 1, option 2, and I
Yeah.
guess the governor's.
Yeah. I mean, even in the,
Okay, that's fine.
yeah,
I'm
even
okay.
in the abstract is talking about, does it make most sense? Is it best to have town hall continue to be near the upper green? Does it,
You
does
don't
it
have to
matter?
pick
Some-
a site.
right,
Can I
some-
just initiate the conversation? Because this is what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to say whether or not it would make sense, would the board prefer to have town hall in the police station or one or the other at the Upper Green, or whether it be on Route 1 somewhere? Not locating a specific site, but just saying in general, or whether it makes sense. Because I think that in these options that he provided for 1 and 2, I personally think from a planning standpoint, that it makes sense to have the police in the town hall located in Old Town, so whether it be Route 1 or for Upper Green, as far as location centralized for Byfield and Plum Island and Old Town to be here. And also that as far as like the small town character, well, I would much rather prefer to have it at the Upper Green. I'm not against it going to Route 1, but I prefer to have it at the Green. So that's kind of where I wanted the conversation to
Sorry,
go.
are you talking about both facilities or just the police station?
Both.
I'm saying in general, if I could
Both,
have
both,
my
okay.
way, I would like it that way. I'm not opposed to it going to Route 1. I'm just saying from a planning standpoint, if we had the choice, I think that because of that small town charm, it would be nice just to keep it here.
I like the idea of town hall being somewhere around here, okay? The police station, the police at one point, goes back a few years, expressed a preference for being on Route 1, simply because they could go a lot of places very quickly. The difference to get to Plum Island between Governors and here, they didn't consider it that a deal breaker. But they have trouble getting to Byfield from here.
I thought it was at the time not so much they wanted to be at Route 1, they just didn't care where they were as long as they were had a new police station.
Well, they-
I thought that's where that comment
don't-
came from.
really?
They don't want to be in Byfield and they don't want to be out on Plum Island.
Yeah.
Because they want to be somewhere.
And what they've said is that administratively, it doesn't really matter where their administrative offices and their dispatch are located because they've got patrol people out, one on each side of town.
Yeah.
So they're out there anyway. So if there's an emergency, they'll go from wherever they are on the road. Just from my observation, administratively, there's so much interaction between the chief, the deputy chief, the town administrator, and other people, the accountant, that administratively, to me, it makes a lot of sense to have them together.
Yeah,
That's,
police are best served when they're informed. And people seeking out the police doesn't happen as often as people bumping into the police, and having them here and understanding what's going on helps them do their job.
They become an integral part of the government, and they're not separate someplace else doing something someplace
There's
else.
a lot to be said for that
right.
approach,
And they're also,
yeah.
I mean, they're doing things now, like they're doing boat permits, they're doing dog licenses, all of those things. So they interact with the assessor's office, they interact with the clerk's office on these issues. So they are becoming more sort of integrated in day-to-day activities. It's
Right.
not just policing.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but I can see your point. Makes sense.
George?
I like it here together, and I think the point is that they are cooperating right now between police and town hall. That cooperation is very valuable. It would be a shame to break it up, because the more apart they are, the more separate it will be between the town hall and the police station. It'd be nothing.
I absolutely concur with that. I don't want to get too historical, but I mean, you know, the town meeting place was moved here in 1640 odd, right? From the Lower Green, and somewhere up near the First Parish Church. And I think there's a historical precedent for having the town meeting, or, you know, where the governance occurred, located on the Upper Green.
The 1940s, the town meeting was the Governor Dummer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the real
Things
town
come and
meeting,
go.
the real town meeting.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
what I meant was the place of governance.
Okay, town hall.
You know, and of course, at that time, it was the church and the meeting
Oh,
house
yeah,
were the
they-
same, right?
They did not distinguish.
They didn't distinguish. So, and I think it gives the Upper Green a great sense of place. And by that I mean that you know that if you go to Town Hall, that's where it is. And I'm dispirited every time I drive by on Route 1 and I see the Raleigh Police Station on Route 133 going to, and I say, what the heck's it doing here? And I just think it's a bad location for the police department. So I think the police department need to function with the town administration. The town administration needs to function with the police department, and it makes for a better town from a communication point of view, and it's worth it to make it work. So that's my perspective.
Great.
Do you want to add anything else, Martha?
From a town planner standpoint.
I mean, my own personal feeling, it basically echoes that. I think that historically, this has been sort of the seat of government, and I feel that it would be appropriate to keep it here.
Yeah. Okay.
And I also, you know, I look at places like Boxford, which has their town hall and their police department, I think, on Spofford Road or something. It's way out in the middle of nowhere. It has no connection
Right, I've
to
seen that one too.
town.
I should have mentioned that
at
one.
all.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
Do we want, are we done with this, do you think?
I am.
And we don't have to take any action because we will be taking some kind of action where we'll be forwarding a comment to you after the meeting next 2 weeks.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks.
for all your work, Eric.
Thanks,
I
Eric.
think you've done a
Hanging
really
your
nice
head.
job, Eric.
Not easy.
Well, last night was the downslope.
Yeah.
It seemed like we
Yeah.
were making progress, and then it's.
Yeah, that's
like-
Well, we
Name of the
were there, and I understood their perspective.
I do
I mean,
too, but
absolutely
it's-
understood it. But it wasn't everybody. So I think it was well-received.
Onwards.
Yeah.
Okay, next item is Jesperson Marsh Meadow revised OSRD special permit decision.
Right, which, I was going through the records, I thought the only thing that was, still needed to be actually kind of
Thanks, Eric.
finished up is the conservation restriction, which has been, had to be revised based on comments from the state, was signed by the Concom and by the selectmen. But in going through my notes, I don't think we ever voted on, or the board never voted on the revised OSRD and signed it. So I think we need to do that, get it filed with the clerk, and then that can also be
I
recorded.
thought we did something with it.
I thought we did too.
I thought we did too, but I didn't find any record of it. Nothing.
We all thought we did.
I would have sworn we had.
Yeah.
No, I would have too. We got a copy for signature and no action was
wasn't
taken
in the
after that.
minutes,
It
I
wasn't in the minutes, was not in the minutes, so.
The fact that didn't we all sign it?
I've gotten no record of that.
Of us signing it?
Nope.
All right, so we do it
So
again
I
and
think
make it
we-
official?
Yeah, I
and-
think we should do it and make it official.
So do we
and-
do
Yeah,
it
let's
now?
do
You want
it.
to do it now?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
yeah,
What motion do we need to take?
basically to approve the revision of the planning board certificate of approval.
Can George read that and make that motion so we get it correct? Can you read this and make that motion and we'll get it correct?
Just down here?
No, I think it's up here. Move the, right? Move that we approve the revision of the planning board
Yep.
certificate of, okay.
This is a motion to approve the revision of the planning board certificate of approval of open space residential development, special permit dated May 4, 2005, for Marsh Meadow, Orchard Street, Newbury, Massachusetts.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You need signatures?
Yeah, I've got 3 copies here, so one will be for them, one will be for the clerk, and one
We
will be
sign
for
all.
our
So this is
records.
one to sign?
Yeah, it's a very,
Okay, I should be signing these?
Are you here for one of the items on the agenda?
The very end of the agenda, where we were going to talk about other important things that you.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, okay.
Well, we can bring that up right now.
Oh, that would be great.
Here you go. This is done? Right, you signed that. I think you signed
You
it.
need to sign.
Oh, maybe you didn't sign it.
No, I didn't sign any of them. I wasn't too sure what I was supposed to do.
Oh, okay.
Is there 5 copies or just 3?
3.
3.
Yeah, you need to do that one
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
All right, if you'd like to, that's it. We knew it.
Come on down
Anything
here
else
if
on
you
that?
want to talk
Why
about
don't you come
this.
on down here and let us know who you are. You
Oh,
want to pick up that microphone and
you could bring it in this if you want to sit down. You don't have
you
to
want to
stand.
sit down?
That's just for the TV because they can't hear when you're.
You didn't know you were on television, did you?
No,
Oh,
well,
you
yes, but
Well, you are. So let us, if you could just give us your name and let us know what other issues you might want to have us hear.
I was just, my name's Darcy Johnson. I live at 9 Olga Way, and I didn't know if there was anything being discussed about potential parking on Olga Way. I know that that's been brought up several times, and I actually had come in and requested to look at the parking study, but I wasn't sure whether that was a topic that was being discussed by the planning board at all.
Okay. Not that I know, but I think you might know
Right,
something
and we
about it.
actually, we spoke, and it is,
Okay.
that's the study that Merrimack Valley Planning Commission did
It's
for
done
that
for,
area.
for the
Was-
central
Yeah,
of
for
Plum
Plum Island
Island.
Boulevard and Sunset.
Right.
And it also does look at the potential for parking on Olga Way as well.
Is
So,
Olga Way where the
It's where
the
the pump,
backside street?
yeah, that's the pump station. People used to park
Yes,
back there
okay,
to,
yeah, I know it is.
yeah, and then when the water and sewer project was done, that.
so I guess
went
it's
away.
important for you to find, what's the status of the study?
So, I mean, Merrimack Valley Planning has finalized their draft, or finalized the study to us, and what I needed to do is, it hasn't really been officially presented to anybody, so I needed to find out from Tracy.
What you'd like to do, right?
How she would, what she'd like to do.
And I'm not trying to rush you in that decision. I just, my neighbors and I have just been trying to monitor any activity on that idea so that we can be a part of the process if it's going forward in any way.
Well,
Makes good sense.
that's fine. So we haven't seen the report,
Okay.
but maybe we could take a look at that? Do you have it?
I have a copy of it, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe
Didn't you
that
say
is-
you had to go through Tracy before you?
I just want to check with her, to see, what she would like to do in terms of distribution and so on and so forth, that's all.
Okay, so let's, Tracy is town administrator. So once we get direction from that, we will do that, and whether or not it's distributed to the community as well, and I think it should be. I mean, it's, they'll affect the
Yes, I mean,
people.
it will
so-
be.
You just gave it a push. That's what you
So,
wanted to do, just gave it a push.
yeah, I mean, it's
Well, we'd
something
actually
this.
like to not have it be pushed if that's at all
Right, right.
possible, but we want to
Did
make
you
sure.
work at all with the MVPC?
No,
Did they
no.
contact you or anyone else from the
No.
community?
No,
You're a
the-
resident, right?
I'm a resident, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, we weren't contacted. I guess I know that there's an issue, and I knew the study was done, and I guess, one of our neighbors had some conversation that this was moving, and we just hadn't heard anything, so we were hoping to find out if that was the case.
It's decent. So you've talked to Martha, and Martha will let you know as soon as she's talked to Tracy, and then if you can call Tracy yourself
Okay.
and find out.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so
Okay?
much.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for sitting through.
It was
all that.
fascinating.
Really? You want an open seat? We have an open seat.
I do love town government.
Good for you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Open Planning Board member. Okay, so we now have a open letter of interest from Richard Moss. And I think that, and we still have an interest from another individual, but that individual needs to clear some things with her place of work before she can, but she's interested.
Yes. But our goal is to get the seat filled as soon as possible before the election, I believe, correct?
I mean, as soon as possible. So I think that we should have, last time, didn't we have somebody go out and, when you brought on, did we go talk to you, or how did?
No, we
You just
had,
showed up?
I came into the meeting, I wrote a letter to
Right.
Martha after
Right.
the ad was in the paper.
So why don't we have Richard come to our next meeting?
Okay.
well, what we've asked before is we've asked candidates to write a letter and provide a resume.
Mhm.
He did that.
He did? Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, that was sent to
That was
you.
the email that
That
came
was
out
the
okay.
email.
of the day.
So he's
All
done
right.
that and basically sent his resume, which is quite impressive.
To say the least.
Um, And so you know Carla, right? The woman?
I don't
Oh, so
know.
these are the folk. They're from Caldwell Farm. Carla was an individual who was really instrumental in working with us to get the HOA to work on doing a walkabout. And her husband, also was involved. And so, he'd be, a welcome addition as far as I can see. But let's have him come in and meet with us and just go back and read that email and see what his credentials are. He's a retired plastic surgeon with an MD and a doctorate in aerospace engineering
Mhm.
It's an interesting combination.
Really?
and a master's in aerospace engineering.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a bachelor's in mechanical. He was
And a bachelor's in
taught
mechanical
mechanical at MIT.
from Princeton,
All from Princeton.
all from,
That
except for
was-
the MD. Where's the MD?
Major.
Someplace, anyway,
major blind
makes a
spot
difference.
thing.
So somewhere along the line, he said, I'm gonna become a doctor. I do that too. I'm gonna become a doctor. So, I think we should have Richard come in and meet with us next session, okay?
And I
Sounds
think
good.
Carla's watching, so.
Carla is watching. Hello, Carla.
I'm sure she is. No, I think it'd be a welcome addition. And so, the point is, we have two positions, as he indicates, we have the full-time position, the associate's position, so if Richard steps up to the plate. And then, just so everybody knows, then we make a recommendation to the selectmen who decide.
Right.
And that's just until the next spring
It's
election.
until the end of David's, or when David's, no,
No, it's to
Well,
the
it'd be
next
until the
election.
next election, and then he would run to fill
right, no, I meant,
David's unexpired term.
and then he runs to fill David's unexpired term. That's what I did. Right. Did you do that? No, you
No.
didn't.
I was
You have
fresh.
just done it. All right, so that's Caldwell Farm Trail. So we really don't have much else to report, except we have a date, which is September the 17th at noon, that Martha and I will go out and meet with the Caldwell Farm folks. We have some cost estimates that we do need to maybe make some adjustments to based on the last meeting we had with Doug, which we should have before we need to have before we go out to the community. And I think that's about it. Doug really should be going to it too. I didn't, did you forward a note to him that that's when the meeting was?
No, I didn't.
Why don't I
check.
do that? I'll
Oh,
do that
okay,
tomorrow.
Okay. And it would be good also to look at the plan to see what, we were talking about maybe doing some extensions and.
Yeah, no, we need to get prepared for that, but we'll do that next week, all right? So that's for that, and then the revised subdivision rules and regs? This is all on you guys.
Yeah, all right.
Is this reading?
This is reading.
Ah, very
I'd like-
impressive.
What I'd like to do tonight is just kind of point out the highlights, because it's way too much for everybody to look at tonight. And there's still a couple of holes.
So what's our homework to go through?
So your
Read it-
homework is
read
to
it
read
through.
through this, and I'm going to point out some of it is just wordsmithing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did was I went through, compared the markup, the draft that we had, that John had put a lot of work into, and went back and looked at Mass General Law, our existing subdivision rules and regs, and also some rules and regs from a few other towns. And there are a couple things I'll just point out tonight. On page 2, we don't have a definition of frontage, either in our zoning or in our subdivision rules and regs. And it's a question that's come up in the past of whether it can be discontinuous.
Yes, it has. And we've already assumed it was continuous, right?
And most communities, their definitions indicate that it's continuous. John and I talked about
Yeah, I
that.
think it certainly should be.
And it should be continuous, and so John prepared a definition of that, which I actually took the liberty of modifying a little
Oh,
bit,
that's
so.
Sure you made
to-
it better.
No, I just put in the word continuous to
Oh,
make sure
okay.
that it did that, so that's one thing I'd like to point out, and whether that should actually be in here or be in our zoning, but it should be someplace.
Okay.
There's not too much under the A and Rs. Again, a lot of it's wordsmithing, and wordsmithing for preliminary plans. When you get to page 11, the definitive plan requirements, this ends up having some more substantial revisions to it. And one of the things that John and I talked about was the original suggestion was to essentially defer to the stormwater rules and regulations for the plan requirements. But in going through Mass General Law and thinking about it, I was a little bit nervous about, because the subdivision control law is regulated by Mass General Law, it seemed to me that it should have a primacy as opposed to, in terms of what the requirements are, as opposed to having
A reference.
a reference.
I absolutely agree with you.
So I have, on page 11, starting with B, the form and contents of the definitive plan, I've put back in a bunch of information in terms of what's required on the plan. Some of it was already there, some of it comes from the stormwater, and some of it comes from, again, from one of the other examples I looked at. And John hasn't had a chance to go through this yet, so it hasn't been vetted, so I'd like all of you to take a look at it. Because there may be some things which are redundant or conflict with the stormwater. We don't want to create conflicts, but the subdivision rules and regs look at slightly different things than the stormwater rules and regs do. So that's kind of what I've tried to emphasize here. So that part of it is fairly lengthy. I put back in the requirements for environmental analysis, and John pointed out that some of those are redundant with some of the other requirements. I haven't edited that, but that's something probably that we should take a look at to try to get rid of redundancies.
You're talking about on page 15, C on 15?
Yes.
So let me ask you, all this new verbiage on 12 and 13 and most of 14, is that brand-new language, or is it just taken and shifted from one place to another?
It's a combination.
Yeah, some of each. It's mostly, I'd say, shifted back. My original rationale was, let's have one set of requirements, because it drives people crazy when they have several boards with different requirements of a drawing for each board. However, we decided not to do that for site plan review. And I do agree with Martha's position on relative to subdivisions being an animal that is not, it is somewhat unique. So I got no problem doing this. I just have not had a chance to look at this.
Okay.
But I don't think there are any real surprises in here. It's just a question of tying this together with the environmental.
So if I were to do this side by side with the existing regs, I wouldn't find this in this location, but I would find it probably somewhere else in the existing regs?
Well, the existing regs, I really don't know, because we've done a lot of grievous bodily harm to
Right.
the existing regs.
You would find some of it. Some of it comes from the existing regs, some of it is just, it was in the existing regs, but has been relocated to try to have it be
Right.
a little bit more sequential. Some of it comes from other subdivision rules and regs, in particular Salisbury's is the one that I was looking at, which they revised and approved in November of 2013, so it's relatively recent.
Okay. And it's all in terms of the definitive, most of these things are the definitive
Yeah,
plan.
the
Yeah.
form and contents of the
Yeah.
definitive plan. Then on page 16E, review procedure, John had, we actually have in our rules and regs, the Board of Health shall within 30 days after it's filed, make a report to the planning board. Mass General Law states 45 days, and I ran that by Ginny to see if we could make that more stringent. I mean, we already do, but her feeling was that we should make it consistent with Mass General Law. So I've done that. This will also need to go through her review.
I thought that municipalities were allowed to make things more stringent.
On something like that time frame, I'm not so sure about. We can in certain other things, but since there's certain things that get tied into constructive approval, and that was, actually, I'll backtrack for a second on that. Under approval not required, John had suggested a longer time for planning board to approve that, but 21 days is the deadline for planning board approval. If it's not done within that time, it's constructively
It's
approved.
approved, okay.
So we don't want to have that happen.
I see. So it just makes sense to stay with their required durations and not mess around with it. Was it originally because we were trying to expedite the whole process?
You know, I'm not sure. I mean, it's something that's been in the subdivision rules and regs since I was involved with it. So I'm not quite sure what the reason was.
Okay. Cool.
Performance guarantee, I took a lot of this. Ours was a little,
What page you want?
on page 18. Ours was a little bit,
Down at the bottom.
yeah, actually it's H, everything under H.
Mm-hmm.
What I've done is I've made this more consistent with Mass General Law in terms of what's allowed for performance guarantee. And again, I'll want Ginny to, take a final look at this, but ours is not totally clear.
Okay.
On page 19, under J2, the digital data submission requirements are basically completely updated.
I was just gonna say, those are all,
And that's based on language from MVPC,
okay.
since they're the ones that take the digital data and do our maps. Design standards, on page 24, the classification of streets, we have the diagram from before, and that needs to be stuck back in here.
Yeah, I don't think there's any change in that diagram.
And then, 11723, the widths of right-of-way and widths of roadway, these all represent what we had last talked about, which was a 58 right-of-way, 58-foot wide right-of-way and 22-foot pavement width.
Okay.
Specifications for construction, not too much changed here, a little bit, another modification of the sidewalks, bikeways. street signs. And then this is a section, one of the things that I felt was really kind of lacking was administration and supervision of construction. So I've added in Article 6, starting on page 33, which deals with pre-construction meeting inspections, which we had in our subdivision rules and regs, but it goes further to add some other things like work performed without authorization, rejecting defective work or materials. It's just something to give us a little bit more teeth. And again, partly I'm reacting to some of our experiences with other applicants, both on site plan review and subdivision. Field changes, which we don't really have anything. So, please look through all of that and see if it makes sense to you or not make sense to you.
Mhm.
It's almost all entirely new.
Martha, on subdivision signs on page 27, section 11729, it talks about permanent signs identifying a subdivision by name other than street signs are prohibited. And that's done fairly commonly in town. I'm thinking of Fatherland Farm for one.
It's been done there. It's been done at Livingston Lane.
Yeah.
So that may be something that we want to take another
Caldwell
look at.
Farms has one, although it
Right.
wouldn't fall in this category. We don't. Colby Lane doesn't.
Right, right.
But they're around.
I thought that they were technically illegal. Didn't we have this discussion before?
We had it a long time ago.
Technically, they're not permitted, but they've gotten away with it over the years.
They've been allowed.
And some of them aren't very attractive.
No,
No, they're not.
Well, the Fatherland Farm one is falling apart. Or did they repair it?
Yeah, still falling apart.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that next time.
Thank you.
let's see. Administration is pretty much the same, and then what John and I discussed doing for what has now become Article 9, since we had the insertion, was to, for the stormwater section, basically to say that the stormwater rules and regs are incorporated into the subdivision rules and regs by reference.
Oh, okay. So you took almost
That
everything out.
saves several pages, yeah.
That's good. That's
Well, it
good.
is.
So, and that's fine. We always said we would do that, so
Yep.
that's just the
Not new.
last,
That's
it's
not
just
new.
all, okay.
So the only other thing that I haven't really addressed is our various application forms and the forms for surety and things like that, all of which don't really quite jibe even with what we're doing right now.
So
There's
could,
one form that I think I have given you, a suggested thing. I can't remember which one it was now.
Yeah, I
It's
know
been
you,
so long.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
it had something to do with inspections,
It was the inspections, yeah, yeah,
which are mentioned in here.
right.
So maybe that form is
Right.
not necessary anymore, although
Well,
actually
I
it's
think
a
there should
way
be
to
a
sign off on
checkoff,
things
right,
would be
right.
good, yeah.
And that's the other thing, the other comment that you had given me was about inspections, that your feeling was that we shouldn't actually schedule them, that we should kind of. go in.
Absolutely
So,
not.
and
The presence of an inspector should be a total surprise.
I thought we were told before that was illegal. I thought we were told before by the attorney when they
someone
reviewed it
said that
we-
recently.
Well, it was on the site plan review.
that we could not go on
Site
property
plan
without
review
being announced.
review that the state did. They indicated that that you needed to have permission to come on someone's property.
Yes. Was it the Attorney General when we got it
Attorney?
back?
I
Yes.
think,
With the
I think
AG.
it was
Yeah.
the comments from.
And the
AG.
site plan review.
Because I remember that I agreed with you, John O'Connell, that I agree that if someone knows you're coming, obviously they're going to behave, but when they don't know. But surprisingly, that was the opposite. They wouldn't allow it.
Right, but maybe, I don't know, to be honest, but maybe there is a difference between site plan review, which is somebody's property and is gonna stay somebody's property, as opposed to somebody's property now that is being improved for the benefit of the town. There's a difference there. I don't know, maybe that matters legally, maybe it doesn't. You got any idea, George?
I still think you need permission, John.
Pardon me?
You need permission, otherwise it's.
Any
a
way you
legal
need-
search,
Okay,
essentially.
well, I think it should be a case of, right off the bat, how about we just give blanket permission for representatives of the planning board to be on
They can
site as
do-
necessary? That would be a
With or without
condition of
notice.
approval.
With or without notice, and you just write it into the.
We did that before, and Ginny took that out.
She did?
Yeah.
In
Isn't that
which,
so?
in the site plan review?
I'm not sure,
I think it was site plan review. But, you know, this will go through her again, and I think, anyway, I didn't change
Okay.
that section based on
Well,
your comment.
we've
I think
certainly
we
got
need
to
to
sort
talk-
it
we-
out.
We've
We-
got to sort
we-
it out.
we
Why don't
can't
we
be-
leave it in and see what happens?
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, I haven't made John's suggested change, so it's the
Okay.
language that was there before.
All right. Thank you. Any comments on this?
The only
Yeah.
comment I have is I will not be here next meeting. I will give my comments on this to
Okay,
Martha,
all right.
and there we
Means
go.
everybody has to be here.
I-
Have you met Richard? Because you won't be here to meet Richard. Have you
No,
met
I
him?
have not. I don't think I have. Has he ever been to a meeting and spoken?
Well, his wife has.
Yeah,
But-
Carla has. I think he may have come to meetings. He's certainly come in and spoken
Yeah.
with me a number of times.
But.
Well, I don't think
Hey,
that
it is what it
matters
is.
whether
Okay,
I-
good enough.
Whether I meet
Okay,
him or not.
liaison reports, unless you have other new business that's not written down. Do you have other new business?
We have a public hearing that night, just so
Yeah,
you
we
know.
do have a public
So-
hearing, and part of it's a special permit, so we won't be able to take any vote on it because we'll need the supermajority. And you will need to sign the Mullen Rule. You'll have to watch the video
Okay,
and then sign that you certify
That
that
I
you
have
you
done that.
done
Okay,
that
fine.
before the continuation.
I
okay.
have a piece of new business, John.
Okay,
Just as a reference for going forward, considering the Springtown meeting, a little early, a potential change to the solar bylaw to bring in peer review with a significant retainer on the front end for engineering and technical in particular. And the person who had suggested it to me thinks probably it has to be also used to encourage people to read the bylaw when they're preparing the material.
You think after that? I was going crazy that night.
so you're doing that?
No, I just tossed that out for consideration. I'm happy to get involved with it.
So basically, you want to look at revising the current bylaw
Yes,
to
to
incorporate
bring in
those
peer review.
To
requirements.
incorporate that requirement, I think we
Yes.
should.
It should have been there in the first place.
Should have been there.
There are some
Yeah.
other technical items.
So I don't know that we can get that done in time. It would have to be,
We can't.
can't.
We can't.
Can't.
Spring.
Spring.
Yep.
Okay, okay,
When is the fall meeting?
October 21st.
yeah, too tight. All right, anything else on new business?
Uh,
There might be some back there. A cup
Oh,
of
you could
things.
report on our meeting with the,
There's a cup in there, and then there's water.
with the
over
finance committee.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. John Weiss and I met with the Finance Committee last night regarding funding for master plan update and also open space and recreation plan update, and I thought it was a very good discussion. You know, we had put together an outline of the tasks that would potentially be involved, and we talked about the process, and the upshot is that they did vote to include if you recall, the language was basically tabled at the Springtown meeting, and they voted to include language to request up to $60,000 for both of those.
For both studies. So that was
Which
positive.
studies were they again?
The master plan and the open space
Open space.
and recreation
Could I
plan.
make a suggestion at this point, that the board come up with, I guess, a set of expectations for what the master plan consultant will be doing, okay? And try to attach some man-hours to it, person-hours, because we would have a reasonable idea of how long this process would last. We know that every time they meet, there's gonna be probably 4 hours, counting travel time, for probably 2 people. And, you know, we can construct some sort of a budget for that. I'm very nervous about saying, we got $60,000, how much do you need?
Wouldn't it be one of those things where you put together a scope of work and a budget, and you
Yeah.
just put it out there to see what people want to bid
Well,
on it?
Well, no, I wouldn't throw the budget out there. I would keep the budget in our hands as a
Yeah.
target for what we think the job is worth to us. But I think we're gonna be doing a normal, normal central register thing for this,
Yeah, and
right?
I think it would be a request for qualifications.
Right, so we start with the qualifications, and then normally you start talking, you rate the people in qualifications. The most qualified, in your opinion, you start talking dollars. If they are outrageous, you say, okay, thank you very much for your help. Start talking to number two, until you get down to somebody that you can afford. Usually, it doesn't, it doesn't take too many people if your expectations are reasonable.
I think that's a good recommendation. What we're gonna try to do, because we have a tight time frame, is to sit down with a couple of firms and give them the scope of what we have to date, and ask them, if we did these kinds of things, do you think it would cost X, Y, or Z? And I don't know if they'd be final bidders or not, but at least it would give us some sense of
Sure.
that the scope that we sent out to you all last week made sense.
Yeah.
And then we can talk to Tracy about it, and then we can feel, and then after it's approved at town meeting, that's the
Yeah.
procedure we would follow, I think.
I did some rough numbers myself. I looked at a 6-month process where the committee meets every 2 weeks, okay? And then I looked at 2 people, 2 planners, and then I looked at 4 hours per meeting, and then they're gonna have another half-day back in the office sorting out what we talked about in the meeting and producing some feedback. And I didn't come real close to $60,000.
Yeah, I mean, a
There
lot,
will be other things that I didn't count, I'm
yeah, I
sorry.
mean, a lot has to, that's basically looking at what it would do to do process. What we don't really know is there a lot of data that needs to be collected above and beyond what we can get from
Right, that is something
MVPC?
that I did not touch. I don't have a
And
clue
I-
what that would be.
And I don't either.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll also be looking at, map production, a lot of maps, actually.
Up
some-
to-
Do we have to
Well,
get into this detail tonight, or can we?
No,
talk
no,
about
no,
this
no, not
later
at
on?
all. We're just giving you a report of where we were and what our, and what our next step is gonna be. And our next step is to, Martha and I need to sit down with some prospective or existing planners and get consultants and get their idea about whether or not what we've sketched out makes sense, okay? So, and then we'll take that to Tracy, and hopefully we can get it on for town meeting. So those are those 2 things. On the liaison reports, the Board of
Did
Selectmen.
you skip your discussions for priorities for,
Discussion.
We did that.
you did?
with the-
Okay.
Well, you want to talk about that? I thought we did that with the woman who was here, Olga Lynn.
I didn't know
No,
if you
this
put
is-
it on there
this
for a
is this
reason.
thing, John, I think.
Oh, the discussion of other planning board priorities. What is that?
Well, we talked
It's our
about a
list
lot of
of
them last
things.
week. I wasn't sure
Oh.
last meeting, whether there was any real update on
I
any
don't-
of them.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. Other planning board priorities, that's from last week's meeting. So we had for discussion last time, sea level rise. I don't know if there's anything more you want to tell us about that.
Not really. This
John?
Duck has been on vacation,
And I'm waiting to hear from CZM as to whether or not, when monies might become
and
available,
maybe
if they
some
do.
funding for that, yeah.
We just did the subdivision regs,
Yep.
Route 1A, we said we'd defer that. Route 1 commercial development is something I think after the town meeting, or would be a subset of the master plan. Signs, George says there's no changes. Affordable housing, we haven't done anything on that.
No.
And the master plan update we just chatted about, so. I'm not sure what we want to do with affordable housing. I think it'd be done part of the master plan.
Could be. I mean, I think it would be interesting to kind of look at the inclusionary bylaws and see whether
Yeah.
there's anything that,
I think we
Makes
have to
sense.
make an effort to do that. If we don't, I think we can be seriously criticized. So let's just say that that should be, well, right now it is part of the master plan.
mhm.
It's, so, okay. Okay. Any comments on that? I'm sorry. I didn't realize that's what that was. So do you want, Board of Selectmen, anything else from them? Well, our letter was submitted, and you attended, and you attended, and you attended,
I attended.
Yes.
and it was
And you attended.
a meeting. Were you,
Yeah, Kathleen was there.
Kathleen, was there? So everyone was there, so there's not
Yeah.
much more to say about that. it was continued to when?
Well, it was continued to September 9th, but because it's election day, they actually can't legally hold a public hearing, so it's going to have to be continued to another, I think their
16th?
second
Oh.
meeting, 20th, I
It'll
think
be
it's
the
the 23rd.
23rd, right?
20,
Or is it
Second.
20,
15th?
9th plus 14 is
15, it's
23rd.
22nd, 23rd.
23rd, yeah. I'll be back.
Okay. MVPC, the first meeting is September 18th. Concom?
Yeah, I guess everybody knows that Borrego Development has withdrawn without prejudice.
actually, they haven't.
They haven't?
That's my
Oh.
understanding. They have not. They're still looking at their options. But they wanted to,
I'm talking Concom now,
I know.
and they,
Which side?
we got the.
Did you get a
Both.
letter?
No, I don't know. Susan put the
Okay.
word out that, now Doug did say, the minute he got back, he was taking some issue with that, and that may be what you're referring to. He felt there was some formalities that were missing.
Well,
So-
my understanding is that they would actually, if they wanted to submit, withdraw without prejudice, they would have to write a letter to that effect.
Okay,
The last I heard was that they were still looking at options, but they wanted to continue to a later date instead of the 14th.
okay, so they changed their
Or
wording.
the 11th, or whatever they were
Because Sue
doing.
did put the word out that they had withdrawn without prejudice in so many words, but, okay.
When would
No.
that have happened?
That's for both
Just the other day?
sites?
Pardon me?
Was that
No.
both sites?
No,
That was what? I'm sorry.
Both sites?
no, just the
No,
main,
no,
Main
just
Street.
the Main Street site, yeah.
Thank God. Yeah.
No, we've already approved the Middle Street site, Middle Road site.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Okay.
But the selectmen will have to be continued to another date in any case.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that either, so I'm glad you brought that up. Is that it? Nothing else on Concom?
No, nothing else, no.
ZBA, anything?
No,
Okay. Can I have a call to disband?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
aye.